Okay, thank you for joining today's webinar, Maximising Lemming Percentages. My name's Ian McFarland and I'm one of the Sheep Connect SA team. Sheep Connect's supported by Australian Wool Innovation, SA Sheep Industry Fund and the Department of Primary Industries and Regions. For more information on Sheep Connect, please visit our website or follow us on Twitter. All of our webinars are held on the Sheep Connect SA YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out as well. Today's presenter is Darren Gordon from NeXtgen Agri. So Darren has over 22 years experience in research and extension. He's worked on the Lifetime Wool program, which led to the development of the extremely successful Lifetime Ewe Management project. And Darren's delivered over 80 lifetime ewe management groups in Southern Australia. Darren's based in Dunkeld in Victoria and works with producers, helping them to breed a sheep that thrives in their environment. So at this time, I'll hand over to Darren, who will talk to us about maximising lemming percentages.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much to Sheep Connect and Ian for inviting me along tonight to talk to producers in South Australia, Victoria, and I even think we've got a few internationals today to listen how we can get the best and maximise our lambing percentages. Now, I'm happy to take questions at any time, so if you've got a question, don't feel you need to sit back, tap in the Q&A or raise your finger and we'll discuss what your question is. So maximising lambing percentages, all about late pregnancy management, getting nutrition right and understanding what drives it. And the biggest thing about driving is knowing your ME requirements and knowing them, then understanding feed in your paddocks, and if you're an early lambs, what grain's in your silos and how much you need to feed your sheep. I'll start with the big one, lamb survival. It's driven by birth weight. It's the biggest, it explains 70% of why lambs live and die. Now you can see there, we've got lamb survival up the horizontal, across the vertical, we've got birth weight. So I'm focusing on the twins. Most of us get singles right. It's twins where we can make the biggest improving. You see a twin at 4 kilos of weight, it's about 75% survival, and a twin at 3.5 kilos weight, it's about 55% survival. So you're looking at 500 grams there that could make a 15 to 20% difference on their ability to live and die. And this is driven by nutrition. So what we do with sheep, and from scanning all the way through to the day they hit the ground, determines their birth weight. So the first thing we need to understand is how much ME they need a day. Now, ME is megajoules of metabolisable energy. It's the same as kilojoules in humans. We all need X amount to maintain. And if we go over that, we put weight on. And if we go below that, we start to lose weight. And that has a profound effect in late pregnancy on ewes. It's the one that, as I said, affects the birth weight. So if we look at a 60 kilo ewe in late pregnancy, single, she needs 13 ME. If she's in containment, which, one of the practices we recommend for, June, July lambing, she only needs 11 ME. And the drop in ME required is due to the animal not having to walk around a paddock and find food. It basically eats and sit down. So we pick up, it's about 85, 90% efficiency on them compared to being in the paddock. If you look further across the 60 kilo ewe, you see singles in early lactation require 22 ME a day and twins require 29 ME a day. We'll never ever get enough feed into a twin in early lactation to actually maintain conditions. So this is one of the big reasons we've got to manage twins differently and build a bit of a buffer. And also you can see there as you journey, so 60 kilo standard merino, 70 kilo big merino, composite and 80 kilo, a really big composite or a first cross ewe. Just as they get bigger, they require more and more ME. It's like petrol in a car. A small car doesn't take much petrol, a big truck takes a lot of petrol.
But Darren, excuse me, just a question regards protein. Where does that fit? You've spoken about ME, energy.
Yeah, protein in Southern Australia, most animals in outside pregnancy only need 6 to 7% protein in their systems, and most, even dry pastures, I'm talking Southern Australia here, dry pastures have enough protein in their system for that. So I know they have issues up in the Monaro, they have issues up in New England area with protein, but we don't see it as a massive issue. Early lactation, because it takes, more ME and protein, it becomes, if it's a limiting factor, they'll produce less milk, so you'll have slower growth rates. But generally, it's not an issue in our environment down in southern half of Australia. So good question. Righto, lambing. I thought I'd start with lambing on dry feed. So I'm talking about most years, late March, early April lambing before we get the opening rains. And the rules are pretty simple with both lambing on dry and green. You must scan. You've got to split your twins and singles. And you've got a condition score at scanning. And this sounds like it's an onerous task, but you're there pushing sheep through anyway. So you might as well put your hands on their backs. That way you can split the lights and heavies. And the reason we do this is so we can target our nutrition to the right animal. Increasing condition score in light twins, you saw that first slide. If we get down to 3.5 kilos, only 50-55% of them will survive. So if you can identify them, all of a sudden you're a long way down the track with the ability to be able to do something with them just by identifying them. Maintaining condition score on the heavy twins, and exactly the opposite when we get too heavy with our singles. We want to take condition score off those animals. One, to stoke your issue, so you not only lose the lamb, but there's a fair chance you're going to lose the ewe as well. So trying to pull weight off those, so the ME you're saving off your heavy singles can go into your lighter twins. And also maintaining condition score in the light singles. So the next question you're going to ask me is, what kind of condition score targets do we need? Righto. Once again, I brought the graph up again. You'll probably get sick of me in this graph, but as I said, it explains 70% why they live and die. You can see they're twins. We want them up around condition score 3.2. So if you see the red line, that gets us up to 75 to 80% survival in our twins. And our singles at 2.7. Once again, if you look at a 3.5 kilo lamb, it's back under 60%. So target, so if you're going to write a couple of things down tonight, twins, condition score target 3.2, singles, condition score target 2.7. And one of the other reasons we have twins in a heavier condition score I alluded to before, because if you've got two lambs that are born and they both survive, the lactation curve requires a lot of energy. This is 29 ME a day requires. So she's going to peel a heap of condition score off her and she'll end up back 2.3 to 2.5 at the end of lactation. If you haven't got the ability to put the weight back on her, she'll go dry next year. So the classic thing, have twins 1 year, go dry the following year. She doesn't have a lamb. If you haven't culled her, she'll put a heap of weight on through the spring and she'll have twins. But we'd want to go twin 1, 2, twin 1, 2, something like that, so we get as many lambs on the ground. Righto. So some of the tactics for the early lambers, self-feeders in their paddocks, especially with the twins. Like the less we can get into the paddocks with twins, the better. If we have to go out there and feed every day, the chance of disturbance increases. So it basically takes 6 hours for the lamb and mother to bond together. So if we can stay out during that period, I'll put a cave in that. Most lambs are born between 4 in the morning and 10 in the morning. So if we can stay out of the paddock during that period, we're going to allow more lambs to bond for that 6 hour period. And once they're bond, they're right for their lives. If you're going to feed, try and feed later in the afternoon. I know all of us love to feed and look at the lambs early in the morning if we're one of those people that goes around them. But if we can hold that back into the afternoon, the better. You might have to do a laneway run or stick the drone up to have a look if there's any ewes that have breaches or anything like that. Smaller mob sizes for twins. As I said before, the confusion factor. If you've got a mob of 300 or 400 twins in one mob and 25, 30 ewes have dropped their lambs on the one day, that's 60 lambs running around. So if we come into the paddock or there's a fox come through or they're near the road or it's a windy day and they're working into the breeze, the chances of those ewes and lambs bonding together is once again reduced. So smaller mob sizes, the research has been done. Earlier lambing is probably not as big an effect because you haven't had usually the rough weather, but the later lambing people, the smaller mob sizes is proven to work. And don't have twins in huge paddocks. It's the same sort of reason. If they're in a 100-acre, 100-hectare paddock and the ewes got to get a feed or a drink of water and she's only had her lambs and she's got to walk down to get those, the chance of them bonding is once again reduced. And the last one's genetics. Ferg and I are massive fans of genetics without sheep, and Ferg did his PhD in fat and muscle over in the West in the late 2000s, and muscle and fat. Something else you're going to write down today, it's PMD and P fat. The drivers are big drivers of conception and lamb survival. They also, if the higher the muscle and higher the fat, increases the storage area on a ewe's back. So if she can have excess, if she's got excess feed during the spring, she can lay that fat and muscle off in a greater area. So then she can draw down on that if she's lambing earlier in the year. She's got a bigger reserves. Correlated about 70% with condition score. So when you condition score on your animals, that's 70% correlated with PMD and fat. It's actually a no-brainer for us now. Everyone we've had over the last 4 or 5 years, there's increased muscle and fat has increased lamb conception and lamb survival.
Darren, question here. You talk about smaller mob sizes. What's the optimum size there?
Look, it's linear, so the smaller the better, but it's got to be practical and it's got to be economical. So I love to see twins, 150 and 100. If we can get them into 50s and 75s, even better. It's a linear response, and especially later in the year when it's wet and cold, it's a higher response. Singles, look, 300 or 400, no worries at all. There's no good data showing us that there's any significant mortality with having singles in bigger mobs. And what that allows you to do is break down, you have singles in bigger mobs, it allows you to break down the twin paddocks into smaller paddocks, whether it be a hot wire or, probably a hot wire or just a couple of running wires. And then you can pull them up, after you lamb for 5 or 6 weeks, you can just pull those up. It's a common practice. It's used extensively now. It's also better for pasture utilisation as well. Good question. Righto. Well, thought we might have not a break, but a quick thought. See if there's any other questions coming up about lambing down in drier times. Ian, you got any questions there that come up on the Q&A?
Not directly about the dry feed, but just going back to the protein question, there was also a question around, can too much protein be a problem?
Yeah, it's outside my scope of knowledge, that one. So I'm not going to guess on that one. There's talk about having too much protein early on in pregnancy, causing excess nitrogen and burn off of embryos. But there's also a lot of work. I reckon a good one to talk to, and if you have a look at some of Michael Friend's work at Wagga, he's done a lot of stuff on feeding early in pregnancy, high protein rations, and most of the stuff shows up. It's pretty good for actually conceiving extra lambs, not less lambs.
Okay, thanks, Darren. There was one question, I guess you spoke about genetics. What's the prospect of using sheep dairy genes to naturally produce more milk?
Sheep dairy genes to naturally, it's an interesting question, because if you look what happened with the dairy game in the last 10 or 15 years of increased milk. So it's had a focus on a single trait. So that's come at a big downsize to conception. If you look at dairy, if you go past the dairy now, they've got 4 or 5 different colours because they've missed this cycle, they've missed that cycle. So if you go a single focus on any one trait, usually there's a downturn, levers. If you pull one lever too hard, there's going to be an effect on the other side. So based on what I've seen in dairy, I don't think it's that great for conception. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Darren. That's all the questions at this stage.
Rightio. So lambing on green food. Guess what? The rules haven't changed. These are the underdog. You got to scan. If you don't scan, and you put say potentially there's a mob of 100 and there's 40 or 50 that are going to have twins, 40 or 50 that are going to have singles, and there's 10 dries, and you put them all in the same paddock, and then you think, well, I've got to feed, so what am I going to feed to? I'll feed to the singles, so I'll just give them X amount per day. So all you're going to do there is have a lighter twin. Well, you think that's no good because twins need extra live weight to survive. So I'll feed to the twin. So you feed more and more feed, and guess what happens to the singles? They get too big and they get stuck. So if you don't split them, you're not in control. By scanning, you're in control. You know which ones are twins, you know which ones are the skinny twins, you know which ones are the fat singles, and then you are the one that's controlling their nutrition. So as I said, the rules don't change. Split your twins and singles, condition score at scanning, split the lights and heavies, increase your condition in your light twins, decrease your condition in your heavy singles, maintain your condition in the heavy twins, and maintain your condition score on the light singles. And if you do most of those things well, you're going to optimise your genetic potential. And at the end of the day, that's all we're trying to do, is get the best out of the genetics we've purchased through good management. Righto, food targets in late pregnancy. So late pregnancy, I call the
Darren,
last...
sorry, just before you go on, sorry, Darren, just explain food while you're there. Explain the acronym.
Yeah, foods are feed on offer. So it's the amount of, for scientific, kilograms of dry matter per hectare. So food came over from Western Australia when Andrew Thompson came over back in the late 90s when he came over to southwest Victoria. Food, so feed on offer, kilograms of dry matter per hectare. Okay, so what that photo there, good question, what that photo there is 1,100 kilograms. If you had a hectare there and representing that 1/10 of a square metre, if you had that much, you've got 1,100 kilos per hectare. And that's all singles need in late pregnancy. Once again, we don't need them big. We just need to be ticking over and maintaining around that 11, 12 ME. Now, with our twins, we've got 2 on board. So we need to feed them more. She's got 2 lambs. She's got to run her own system, and she may or may not be growing some quality wool. And all these things require energy and protein. So they always need more. Okay, so the twins, about 1,300 kilos through late pregnancy. And that's what set them up for those good live weights that we're talking about, 4.5 kilos at the point of lambing, which gives us our 75 to 80% survival. Righto. I thought I'd chuck this slide in, and I've seen this a lot. We get a little bit of, we have the autumn break, and we get a little bit of green grass, and we're thinking, oh, beauty, I'll get some ewes out and they get some protein and get a little bit of ME out of the grass. But what it really does, if you put sheep out on the left-hand photo there, which is 300 food, which is only growing 10 to 15 kilos per day. It's only giving the sheep 3.5 ME, so it's not making up a great portion of their ration. You'll chew that down, and it'll stay like that for the next 6 to 8 weeks. But if we can be strong through late pregnancy and hold off on our paddocks, so we can set them up to grow, so twins can walk into some good food paddocks. We can walk into 1,100. There's 12.5 ME a day there. But have a look at the big thing. Even through winter, it's growing at 25 to 35 kilos a day. And that's because pasture, it relies on moisture, sunlight, temperature, size of the plant. So the bigger the plant, more sunlight and moisture it can take in, the quicker it grows. So you can actually you can make your own grass in winter by being strong and conserving pasture, especially in your twin paddocks from that autumn break. So graze and do whatever you normally are doing, but have a think about a plan, which paddocks are going to be my twin paddocks. And if you can pull your sheep off after the autumn break and allow them to grow, they will go quicker through winter as well. The other tactics you've got, the use of nitrogen, the use of gibberellic acid to enhance that growth. But if you've only got 300, there wouldn't be an agronomist in Australia tell you to put nitrogen out on that. But if you get it up to 1,100, they'll be running at you. Right, so while we're on foo at the point of lambing. So as I said, 70% of lambs living and dying is explained by the birth weight, but foo at the point of lambing has an effect as well. So if you look at, say, 3.5 kilos, just do an imaginary line up to where the 500 is, you're looking at about 40 to 45% survival, okay? But even at that birth weight, so leave the line there and we go all the way up to 1,500 kilos, we've got 65 to 70% surviving, even at a low birth weight. Now, there's a couple of reasons there. If they've got low food, the ewe will be hungry, so she'll be walking the paddock more often. So the more she works, so her primal instinct will be to survive. So she'll have the lamb, but her primal instinct is to survive. She'll be out looking for feed, so she can look after herself and grow milk. So there's 2 things happen there at the low feed. She won't be strong enough. She'll be lighter, and she won't be producing as much milk or as much colostrum. But if we have 1,500 kilos in that paddock, we can not trick the system, but we can have a lighter ewe go into a paddock with more food and we'll change its survival. The other thing that happens too, if she's got 1,500 kilos around her at the point, she'll stay around the birth site for longer. So the further, as I said, takes 6 hours for a ewe and lamb to bond. So if she's got lots of food and doesn't have to go far to graze, she'll stay around the birth site. The other thing is she'll produce more colostrum, increases survival, she'll add more milk, and the lamb will grow quicker. So the sooner we can get the colostrum and milk into the lamb, the more chances, as you all probably know, once you get past 20, that first day, most lambs survive. So all about having some food and condition score in the lamb. Any questions on that one? As I see, there's a few more questions popped up on the Q&A.
Yeah, Darren, there's a question, how close to the lambing date do you put ewes into the lambing paddock? And I guess related to that, how late is it detrimental to have them through the yards to draft up the mobs?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I wouldn't handle twins 2 weeks before lambing. I could probably handle singles 2 weeks before lambing, but I'd prefer twins 3 to 4 weeks. The risk of pretox and hypocalcemia are certainly increased if you handle sheep, especially if they're in lower condition through that time period. Introducing them to paddocks, as long as you're not completely changing the ration, like going from a high grain diet to a high carbohydrate diet and grass. The other thing, if you do something like that, all you're going to do is upset their stomachs as well, so they'll scour for a day or two, which is not a great thing coming into lambing as well.
Yep, just a point of clarification around late pregnancy.
Yep.
Is that 4 weeks from lambing or 8?
Yeah, no, I call late pregnancy day 110 through. It's 147 days. Your earliest lambs will hit the ground usually around day 143. So day 110, day 120 starting to get into late pregnancy. Yep. Go on, sorry.
Thank you. Yep. And there was a question around what is the calculation to work out food in a pasture?
You got to do a lifetime ewe course. So there's two ways. There's a couple of good tools now. AWI have got a great food library. So I see they're one of our sponsors with Sheep Connect. So if you tap in food library, there's a heap of photos there. So I'll go back a step here. When we were doing research back in the 90s, there was rising plates, falling plates, visuals, calibrated cuts. And John Carley was the chief pasture science at the department then, and he did a calibration of everyone. So a trained eye versus the falling plate and the rising plate, and the trained eye was more accurate than everything else because it could see height and depth, where all the other plates, falling plates and rising plates, could only see density. They couldn't see both. So if you can train yourself by using photos. So anyone that's done Lifetime Ewe would have seen all the photos we've done there. But also, as I said, AWI have got a great food library where you can actually go out in the field, take the computer with you and compare to what it's doing. It's nowhere near 100% accurate, but it gives you a good guide for what's going out there. And when there's dry feed, what you can do with dry feed that's got no moisture in it, you can take out a quadrant, so something that's 1/10 of a square metre, so 40 by 25 centimetres or a 33 centimetre radius circle, sorry, not radius. You cut that and then weigh it. So every gram inside that 1/10 of a square metre equals 100 kilos per hectare. So if you've got 5 grams in that 1/10 of a square metre, you got 500 kilos per hectare. If you've got 15 grams, 1,500 kilos. Then it becomes just a question of the quality. So the other thing, why I've cut it, stick it in a bag, send it off to feed test, and you'll get a digestibility. Dry feed in Southern Australia at Pasture senescence, it's around 60% digestible, which is enough to put weight on adult sheep, and it drops about 5% a month after that. And if you get heavy rain like we did this year through January, if you get 10 or 15 mil, it'll decrease at another 5%. So instead of dropping 5% a month, it'll drop 10%. So if you go from 60 down to 50 is marginal. You need to start start feeding. But if you have 50% digestibility and you get rain and time, it'll drop back to 40. And once you hit 40% digestible, you're only getting 1/3 of the nutrition that's required for your animals. Righto. So no one's asked, what about the weather? So you're right. So Windshield Index was developed by Malcolm McCaskill out of the Department of Hamilton in the mid to late 2000s. So it's a combination of wind speed, rain, and temperature. Okay, so the higher that number is, the more lambs will get killed. So you can see the same thing again. If you look at our 3.5 kilo light twin. So if you look at the 1150, only about 30% of lambs will survive. If we can change that wind speed and temperature up to change it by topography, by plantations, by facing the north, we're up over 80%. So we can't change the weather, but we can certainly, if we know which animals are under the most pressure, we can put them in the better sheltered paddocks, high grass paddocks, ones that are facing the north and facing the east. And we can significantly change their mortality. So that's a big one. So that's another great thing about scanning, is it gives you, if you know which ones your light twins, so like those 3.5 kilo twins, I guarantee you've got a paddock on your farm that you know always gives better lamb survival. So if you can find that, as the slide said before, get some food growing in that paddock and also change the wind speed and the rain and the temperature. You can't stop the rain, but you'll certainly change the wind speed by having decent shelter and facing away from the southwest, because that's where we get our cold winds from. Right, so that's the science. So Ian sent out today in an email to the people that have registered a bit of a risk matrix, which looks at the condition score of your sheep, how much food you have in your paddocks, what kind of shelter you have in your paddock, how big is the paddock, but also the topography of the paddock. So it looks something like this. So basically you go along and have a look at where's my condition score. So if my sheep are under condition score 2.7, I'd write down a 1 in the far box. And you work through it like that. Then what it does, you do this for your paddocks. So you identify your sheep first, and you identify the rest is all paddock stuff. So if you've got 4 or 5 ones there, you're going to have to start to implement some strategies on how you can improve your lamb survival. So it's just a quick and dirty, but it gives you a bit of an idea. And the other thing you can do too is look at history. If you've got a good record of your lambing paddocks, and some that are always been good lambing paddocks, add that to the story as well. So the ones that, if you've got low food, big paddock size, hardly any shelter, and the topography faces the southwest, you either put, your big fat singles or your dry sheep in there. So just build up a bit of a history of your paddocks, and then do a bit of a risk assessment on each paddock. It doesn't take long to do. And it's very, as I said, it's very, very simple. And it gives you a quantitative score of where your paddocks are based on, first where your ewes are, then what's happening with your paddocks.
So I've got one there, Darren. So if you score badly in, all of those 6 criteria,
yep.
Where would you start, I guess?
Where would I start? Condition score, because condition score drives lamb birth weight. And lamb birth weight, 70% of why they live and die. So the top one's your most important by far. Yep. And so, as I said earlier, at scanning, you still got around day 90, you've still got 50 odd days, 50 plus days to change your nutrition of your sheep. And it's the risk of your light twins. That's where you get your mortality. So even if you don't do anything else but address your light twins, you're going to increase your lambing percentage regardless. Good question. Something else pop up in the Q&A there, Ed?
Darren, I guess related to the food side of things, with,
yep,
I guess, quite a number of South Australian producers lambing early, sort of April, May.
Yep.
Basically, there's no way we'd have 800 in the paddock probably. Could be some remnant stubble.
Yep.
But generally less than 800 kilograms, certainly early
Yeah, right. Good question. So you look at things that you can control. So go into your stubble. If you've got no grain left on the ground and you've got no flag leaf, you're basically left with just the straw, aren't you? So you're looking at maybe three, maybe 4 ME tops. So that becomes all about nutrition then. So it's your ability to what you feed will drive your lamb survival. If you're using good nick, and most early lambers are, like that's why they do it. They can use the spring, get them pregnant, and then try and lamb down with a sheep and egg, and then it bleeds the live weight condition score off them. The next thing they can do is their paddock size. Like if we can mob size, if we can reduce the mob size in our twins, once again, your light twins are your most dangerous animals. If we can reduce that mob size, put them in smaller paddocks, we'll increase our lambing percentage. So you don't have to have the green feed. Obviously, I'd love to have it, but we can reduce that by improving our nutrition, decreasing our mob size and decreasing our paddock size. Because at the end of the day, if you're lamb in April, May, you're not going to get a lot of weather. So you can probably not completely rule it out, but you can rule a fair bit of it out. So it all comes down to nutrition and mob size and paddock size. Like the big paddocks, I know the croppers love their big paddocks so they can go straight up and down with the GPS. They don't have to think too much. They can identify which paddocks are the smaller one, which ones are the smaller paddocks, and put their twins in those. Any more questions there?
Yeah, just a couple of questions regards topography. So one was one of our attendees was a bit late, so just they'd like a quick recap on north versus south facing paddocks.
Yep.
And another one relating to topography. Yeah, if you can just expand on what topography.
Well, topography comes in a
southwest.
Yeah, so we know, our coldest weather comes across the Great Australian Bight from the southwest. So if we can, the most dangerous paddock is a hill facing the southwest, because as you know, when wind goes uphill, it speeds up. And remember from your fire brigade days, I think every 5 degrees means an extra 10k an hour. So if you've got a hill that's 10, 15 degrees slope, you're going to increase, 20, 25k an hour on top of whatever the wind speed. So that's your most dangerous paddock. Another thing with topography is valleys. If you've got, rising and falling slopes, you're going to have valleys. And as you know, same rule, if the wind's going down the hill, it'll reduce speed. So if you can have your high risk animals go on the other side of the slope, you'll decrease the effect of the chill factor. So perfect world, you've got a hill facing the northeast, so it'll get more sunlight for starters in the middle of winter, which means it'll be warmer, so it reduces the chance of temperature. It also reduces the chance of wind being a major issue. Good question. So there's a few more in the Q&A popped up there, Ian.
You'll be pleased to know that one of our attendees scored an 18 for their lemming paddocks.
My goodness, well, we need to go do a case study there, don't we? That is awesome work. That's every 1 in a 3. Yeah, good on them. I'm not being sceptical, of course. Yeah.
All right, another question here. If I lamb in winter with good condition score, won't this give a good result?
If I lamb in winter with a good condition score, yep, it'll increase your because condition score is related to nutrition. So if you've got good condition score, therefore you fed the lamb well, so the lamb will hit its optimum birth weight. So we're talking twins here once again. So you reduce one of those things. So the next thing you can do is have food in the paddock, smaller mob size, smaller paddocks, and that way you'll optimise it. But yeah, if you get your nutrition right, you're a long way there. So all the others, the condition score is the big one because of birth weight. Then the others are all add-ons.
All right. Another one related somewhat is rams have been out of a mob for 2 weeks, used at condition score 4. Should condition be reduced? And if so, back to what condition score? And then at what stage of pregnancy should condition score be increased?
Yeah, there's John Young who does all our economic modelling for us. So when we're doing research, we send all our coefficients to Youngie, then he models them in his model. So the rule with losing condition score is as long as you can put it back on at some stage, you can lose as much as you like. But in saying that, if they're conditioned, usually we're not talking condition score 4, we're talking, 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, and you knock it back to 2-7, then you can pick it back up. But if you're 4, you've got a little bit to play with. So, yes, if you want to save a bit on your feeding, like the first 90 days only has an effect of about 100 to 150 grams on birth weight, whereas the last 60 days can have up to 300, 350 grams effect on birth weight. So, once again, wildlife scanning, we can identify the twins, and then if we need to put weight on those ones, we know we can do it. So, yes, you can lose weight, and you've got a bit to play with if they're in condition score 4.
That's all the questions at this stage, Darren.
Righto, we're starting to draw a close. Right, a management plan. So it's all about, and I've been harping on this, that's the whole message for the night, is if you want to increase your lambing percentage, it's your skinny twins that are going to drive you down. So increase condition score in late pregnancy, put them in the highest food paddocks, smallest mob size, the best shelter, and some hay in the paddocks, like a bit of roughage, and their ability to go out and access a bit of feed, when they want to, helps as well. So prioritise your skinny twins and follow those 4 to 5 rules, and you'll increase the likelihood of higher survival in your twins. Righto. Couple of old classics here with the management plan. Something that is written down is 70% remembered, but more importantly, there is a 42% higher chance of getting it done. A bit of the old social science there for you. So that's why I like using the, where is it? Your matrix. If we do that, we're writing it down and we're starting to come up with a plan, haven't we? So commit yourself to a plan and you're a long way there. Thanks very much for having me. So quick plug for the company, obviously work for NeXtgen Agri. So we're big on our genetics and our nutrition. So if anyone's got any questions or has some queries, you can contact me in Australia. And if you want to talk to Ferg, just tap into www.nextgenagri.com and he will follow you up. Thank you.
Okay, Darren, we do have a question here. If foo is above 2,000, do you have an opinion on the maximum twin ewes per hectare before mismothering or other issues increase?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So a twin-bearing ewe in late pregnancy, early lactation is about 4.3 DSE. So if you've got 10, you're running at about 43 DSE. So if your pasture grade's only 15 to 20 kilos, you're going to quickly pull back the amount of foo in the paddock. But if you're only going into that paddock because you've specifically set it up for lambing over a 5-week period, that's not a problem. So you can actually, we haven't seen, quite the literature here, we haven't seen an effect on DSE per hectare. It's more about the mob size on lamb survival. So yes, you can load the paddock up, but once you start getting mob size up over 100 to 150, it's a linear effect. The higher the mob size, the lower the lamb survival. But you can have a small paddock of 40 and say 5 or 6 hectares and run 10 ewes to the hectare, and that would be fine as well, because you've still got less lambs lambing per day, which is your confusion factor. So yes, you can run a fairly high stocking rate as long as it's not a big mob size. I took a long way around that one, didn't I?
All right, Darren, question in regard to mortality. Is 3% considered too
high? Look, the Australian average is, somewhere between 3 and 5%, but the range is, from 0% to 22%. So personally, I think any ewe mortality is too high. So, and I know there's things we can't control, but we can also implement a lot of things that can reduce ewe mortality, your vaccinations, your drenches, not having ewes too fat, not having ewes too skinny. So a lot of those things we can control. I'd love to see it get down to 1%. And I reckon that's the message we need to be selling to everyone as well, that, we can manage this, we can get it down to those figures from an animal ethics, marketing point of view.
Okay, and just one around confinement feeding. There's quite a number of producers setting up containment areas and feeding sort of prior to the break.
Yep.
Any comments or further comments, thoughts with pregnant ewes?
Yeah. Yeah. Good question again. I really love them post scanning. If we can, and the reason is we can target our nutrition with our light twins and our heavy singles. We can put them in the pens, and whatever we feed them per day, we're in control. If we want to pick them up 0.1 of a condition score, we know we have to be, a 3 ME surplus a day, and vice versa with the singles. We're going to peel some weight off. We just limit their intake, so it gives us great control. And some of those previous, I'll go back to it. Bear with me. This one here, if we can let grass get growing, we can actually make our winter pasture growth rate higher by having more food in the paddock. So we can set ourselves up. That's big fan of containment areas. Also for soils degradation. There's a lot of good things about containment. Yeah.
So directly related to that, you sort of covered it. Is lambing in confinement? Do the rules change?
Look, I don't like it. Disease, too many ewes and lambs in the one spot. So I'm not a fan, but I realise there's situations that sometimes you have to do these things. So if you're going to do it, limit your mob size in your lightest twins, and also probably the other twins too. If you can have them in as smaller mobs as possible. You're going to have to write up on your disease protocols if you're going to do it, but if it can be avoided, I certainly wouldn't. I realise there could have been instances last year in Kangaroo Island where it may have been needed, but I think they got past that with the early rains. But to be avoided if possible.
Okay. Question regards, I would like to be in the top 10% of producers in lamb survival. What scanning to weaning percent should I be aiming for? Twins and triplets? And 85% and 75% respectively.
Yep, so I'd be looking at 90%, 9 to 95 in my singles. But we're getting a lot of merino blokes doing 80% plus now in their twins. Triplets is a different game again. Look, there's anecdotal stuff. There's quite a bit of research being done out of Murdoch University at the moment. So once again, Andrew Thompson leading his team over there, looking at condition score, looking at mob size, looking at the amount of feed with our triplets. It looks like 240. And no doubt to be anecdotal stuff says, we've got a mob high, but what we're trying to do is make it repeatable. So there's certainly some research in that spot now. So keep your eyes open. So anytime you see some stuff from Andrew Thompson, it'll be some good work. So, 80 plus in your twins now, 90 in your singles, 9 to 95. So if you scan 150, you should be marking 140, 135, 140 now. Yeah. Scanning 160, bump it up again.
So that question, related to composite ewes as well.
Yep. So composite ewes, slightly bigger birth weight. Look, there's, you look at some of the stuff Timmy Lemming's doing, 85 to 90% in twins. But, Timmy's got some of the most perfect topography in the world for lambing where he is. He's set up his place so well with shelter belts and valleys and stuff like that. And the singles go out in the open tablelands. There's ways to do it, but sometimes we all haven't got the same topography. So the biggest thing, coming back to is we can manage the nutrition side of the story. We're going to be a long way there, and then start to add the other things on top of that. It's no good having the best pastures in the world and you're putting a ewe in it that's condition score 2.5 and it's going to give you a 3 kilo lamb. So get that nutrition right first in your lambs, in your ewes, which gives you your birth weight.
Okay, a question relating to, the hillside. When do you suggest the best time to give the first glandback shot in ewes or lambs at sailing?
So are we talking pre-lambing here or post-lambing?
I guess they're trying to determine your recommendations on when to give
Right. So I'm not a vet, but I worked with a vet company for 4 years. So pre-lambing, 3 to 5 weeks before lambing for the ewes. All that is a primer for the lamb. So then you got to give the lamb another one at lamb marking and then another one at weaning. And any time after that, where 3 or 4 months after that, if you're giving the lamb the opportunity to grow, if you put them into a feedlot, anytime they've got the ability to grow flat out, you'll need another vaccination.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Sort of a question around or comment can you make around stock lime salt and cause mag?
Yeah, so certainly for hypocalcemia, it works. We work on 1/3 salt, 1/3 lime, 1/3 cause mag. That's when I was with the vet company. That was the recommendation with Andrew and David, and it seems to work pretty well. Make it up as a loose lick. It's a lot cheaper if you make it up, but if you want to buy it in the blocks, that's the kind of ratios you need. Yeah.
All right, Darren, I think we've come to the end of our questions. So I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today in this webinar. And Darren, I'd just like to thank you for sharing your expertise and insights into the lambing side of things. If anyone's got additional questions, you can contact us directly using the information on your webinar registration. And I'd just like to thank everybody for their time and have a great evening. And thank you again, Darren.
Pleasure. Thanks for the invite.